The NBA season has officially gotten underway, and we've already had some amazing outings, storylines, and just an opening week for the history book. This might be one of the best opening weeks that we've had in, I'd say, quite a long time. And we all know parity is at its all-time high in the league, so we've had some teams that have upgraded, revamped, and we've seen those upgrades, while we've also had some teams that have upgraded and revamped that haven't necessarily either seen an upgrade or just look ordinary and they just haven't worked out. During the offseason, of course, we've had questions for some teams as any other offseason would go, and their operations going forward. And while some of those are already forming a concrete answer, there's others that it's gonna take some time, as we expected, to really answer those questions. Now, I will say there's also developing stories that we didn't anticipate that are coming to a head and maybe have a conclusion by the end of the week. Some things like the James Harden story and some other stuff like that. I don't want to cover too much because we're talking about basketball itself. James Harden, you're going to get another video on your own again, because I think I already made one. But before we get into the video, like, comment, and subscribe if you're new. If you're not new, welcome back to the channel. I appreciate having you here. Drop a like on the video. Let me know what you think about the first week of the NBA season, and let's hop into it. Now, first off, this is a new series. I'm gonna just let y'all know that outright. So this is gonna be a little shaky. I'm gonna try to figure out the little formatting for it and everything. My voice is a little hoarse. If y'all hear it, forgive me. First off, opening night. And I'm holding the mic for this video. Because this is gonna be one of those ones that it's not like my normal videos where I'm telling a story or a biography, or I don't know how to explain it, but it's not like my normal videos. We're just talking, reaction. I guess that's what you could call it. It's a reaction based kind of thing. So it's going to change week to week. If you have any suggestions for any teams or anything like that, let me know, because I'm willing to watch any and every team. We got League Pass for a reason. Opening night, Denver Nuggets, Los Angeles Lakers. Now, we already expected the Nuggets to come back strong, basically the way they came back. The Nuggets did not miss a beat. Jokic had a 29-point triple-double like his usual self. And I was one of the ones that had questions regarding their depth and stuff like that. And I'm gonna be honest, we still got questions about their depth because the Lakers made it easy on them. Their starting five, all of them scored in double figures. You got KCP with 20. You got, I believe Jamal Murray had 25. Like, everybody was hooping on their starting five. Their bench scored where they needed to score. I wouldn't even say they didn't need to contribute. I would say the Lakers didn't force them to contribute. The Lakers starting five didn't show up. Anthony Davis started out the game pretty hot. 17 points in the first half, 0 in the second half. And it was disgusting. It was abysmal because it was more of the same. LeBron is carrying this team, and he's at the point where that should not be happening. It is clear as day this should be Anthony Davis's team. And that night, it wasn't shown. We're going to get to game 2. And game 3 is actually happening while we speak. I didn't want to wait till the end of these nights games because it would be about 1 o'clock in the morning by the time I record this video. So no, that was not happening. The biggest factor to the Lakers Nuggets game that was disappointing, and on the Lakers end of it, Anthony Davis's end of it to be most specific, the table was set for this game all off season. Like, you know, most notably, we had Anthony Davis talking about here. He hears them chirping and he couldn't wait for the game. And it was like, you say all that, and then when we get there, yeah, you started off well, but down the stretch, you just were not there. And it was clear. It was clear if you watch the game, if you watch highlights, Anthony Davis just flat out disappeared in the second half. Next game, second game where they played the Suns, he showed up. And I don't know what the difference between Suns and Nuggets is. I don't know if you feel like the Nuggets. Maybe it's a psychological thing. I don't know. But this game, it did look like the AD that we do need to see from games 1 through 82. The biggest thing about AD that's disappointing, and this isn't even as a Lakers fan, it's just as a basketball fan, he has the makeup to be the best player in the world. He has the tools to do that. He can shoot. He can handle the ball with a 7-foot frame. One of the best, if not the best defenders in the league. Like, he has the makeup for it. It's almost like he just doesn't. He don't got that dog in him to go take it like everybody else does. Like we see in the Giannis's, like we see in Embiid. We even see it in Jokic. Jokic has a stout attitude about him, but we still know when the time comes, he got that dog about him. And even if he didn't have that dog attitude, so to speak, the numbers speak for themselves with him, so that you know he's a dog. Now moving on, I think the game after that was Phoenix and the Warriors. Game wasn't anything special. It was a good game. Don't get me wrong. Devin Booker went absolutely nuts. 32-point game in the first game of the year without Beal and a struggling KD. I don't want to say he did it alone, but practically was doing it alone. They did beat the Warriors. It was a pretty good game. Like I said, KD did struggle that game, so it wasn't that much of a game. Like, I love watching Booker, but it wasn't one of those games where you're just too excited to watch, like most primetime games. Now, I will say the next game against the Lakers, KD did return to form, but that was without Beal and Booker, so maybe it's a little bit easier. But he did have 39 against the Lakers. They did lose, but in this game, Anthony Davis looked more like Anthony Davis as well, so that was a good thing for the Lakers. That was just opening night itself. I kind of wanted to touch on opening night specifically because, of course, the first game with the Nuggets Lakers, and you know, we wanted to see what the new look Suns looked like. Moving on from that, just in the week in general, Luka Magic, boy, I chose the Spurs to win that game. I won't even lie to you guys. I only chose them because it was more wishful thinking, and I was on some hater shit. I ain't even gonna lie to you. I was really on some hater shit with that. Despite significant offseason changes for the Dallas Mavericks, they started the season with familiar reliance on that superstar Luka, and he showed up. He heard the call and he answered it. Luka looks like he could genuinely be a true MVP this year. A lot of us have said and chosen him as an MVP in years past, but this is the first time I think the Mavericks have a shot to actually get him. Well, I'm only say get him. He has a shot to lead the Mavericks to a high enough seed to where he can actually be in consideration for that MVP. Because if we're being honest, he's been able to be in consideration for it. They just haven't been good enough, and this team looks like they're pretty good. Now, admittedly, the first two games they played are against bad teams. Spurs were the #1 overall pick team last year. The Brooklyn Nets, despite being a playoff team, they were only a playoff team off the backs of KD and Kyrie. On the second half of the season stretch, they were not a playoff team. So they've played two teams that aren't the best, but they have played two teams where they're great defensively. Pop has had that team in a very good defensive state even before Wemby was there, but now that you have Wemby with his rim protection, just elevates them even more. Same with Brooklyn Nets. You got Claxton on the back end, you got Mikal on the perimeter. So it is two defensive-minded teams that are going to give you problems on the defensive end and have you struggle, as seen by the 2-point totals in those games. They were pretty close games. Admittedly, the Mavericks had those games in hand from start to finish for the most part, but either way it goes, like, the defenses did show up to play. It wasn't just a cakewalk for the Mavs, and it's safe to say Luka is officially on MVP watch. If nobody else is going to say it, I'm going to say it right here, right now. This Mavs team actually looks like they can finally win enough games to be a threat. Derek Lively was the perfect, and I mean perfect, draft pick for them. I'm going to touch on that a little bit later because I have my own segment where we're talking about rookie spotlight kind of thing. So we'll talk about that then. But this Mavericks team can really make some noise. It's tough because the West is very deep, but regardless, Luka, I have faith in him. He's that dude. He's going to get it done. We're going to go ahead and go on to the East. The only really team that we're going to talk about is Damian Lillard and the Bucks. And I know y'all watched that first game against the 76ers. Damian Lillard dropped 39, but the thing about that 39, it was like I felt Giannis took a backseat to Dame. Not to say that he should be taking that like onus or whatever. We know Giannis. He's humble as humble can get. He says it himself. He's one of the most, I forget the exact terms, but essentially overrated role player. Like he says he's the highest paid role player in the league. That's what he calls himself. Like, so we know like Giannis is a very modest guy. So I understand him kind of taking that back seat, but Damian Lillard has given the Bucks a much needed boost in clutch situations. That's the biggest takeaway from this team, that game, and what we saw. The way they were able to finish out the 76ers wasn't nearly as shaky as we've seen the Bucks try to finish out teams in these past 4 or 5 years. Even in the year that they won the championship, this was the first time I've seen a Bucks team actually be able to finish. And I'm convinced by that finish. This is a team where I'm genuinely scared of. Again, even after the ring, I was never scared of them. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people, a lot of teams, a lot of fan bases weren't scared of them. They're scared of Giannis, but the Bucks, not really. And even with Dame there, yes, some people could say, no, I'm scared of Dame and Giannis. Now that Dame's there and watching them in that game, I'm scared of them as a team, because as a team, they played very well. Dame brings them much needed spacing that allowed them to really be great, like really be great. Giannis was able to get easier looks than I've really seen Giannis get in the past, and it's just gonna be really scary for the East with this Milwaukee team, especially with Damian Lillard looking like the same Damian Lillard we saw in Portland. Oftentimes we see a star go to a big team, go to another team or whatever, and it's time to really put up or shut up, and they're not that same kind of guy, a la Anthony Davis. But with that being said, Damian Lillard and this Milwaukee Bucks teams looks very, very scary. Again, they're playing right now as we speak, so game 2, I'm gonna cover that on another day. Well, I'll cover the rest of the games on another day, but game 1, I'm gonna tell you now, Damian Lillard might be my clutch player of the year. He might be an early favorite. Now going back to the West. Now this is a team that should be in the East, but they are in the West, and that's the Memphis Grizzlies. We know they were down Brandon Clark. We know they're down Steven Adams. We know Ja is out 25 games. They lost Dylan Brooks. They lost Tyus Jones. This team's in shambles, and we've seen it. They're 0-3 to start the year, and it's tough. Contrary to preseason predictions, there are some teams that thought the Grizzlies would struggle starting, but I don't think we all expected them to lose their initial 3 games, especially one of them coming to the Washington Wizards. That one raised biggest concerns, because to me, that was a crazy game. They were down, I want to say 30 at one point. It was ugly. Now, obviously, we all know the Grizzlies are without their main guys, but it was sad seeing their Twitter post. I want to say it was the Thursday or Friday night game. I don't remember for sure. I'm gonna find the post, but it had practically everybody on their roster that they're paying with the hopes of being on the floor pretty much on that list. Their rotation 1 through like 7, probably like the guys that are playing majority 20 plus minutes or more, they had like 7 of those guys on that list. That's the best way to put it. There's no other way to put it. And it was sad, because it's almost like they're putting out their G League team out there, and it seems like a year that's going to be a wash for the Grizzlies unless they can make some type of midseason push. But my thing about that is, even if you make a midseason surge, the West is so deep that those 3 games are gonna matter when it comes down to March and April. I could eat my words, but I think the West is gonna be that deep. It was that deep last year. It's even stronger this year, so there's no reason to think it would be any different. So going 0-3, that does hurt you a lot to start the season. It's going to be tough. We're going to keep our eye out on the Grizzlies for this year, especially once Ja gets back, because you never know. What if they're so bad that when Ja does get back, they sit him out? He got a back injury. He got, you conserve him, keep him, or maybe you let him play because he does have to get his legs on him. I don't know, whatever they do. But regardless, Grizzlies Nation, I feel bad for you. You guys are in shambles right now. It's going to be a tough start to the year. This first quarter of the season for Grizzlies fans is going to be a rough one. I'm going to just prepare you for that right now. And then lastly, we're going to get to Wemby. Wembanyama has arrived. They did lose to the Mavericks, like I said before. They are playing right now, I believe, against the Clippers. But he made his debut with some limitations. And it really just came with dumbass foul trouble. He accumulated fouls, but he displayed potential, particularly in the game against the Houston Rockets. That was where his most potential showed. That was the second game. First game, the Dallas Mavericks, they got him in some situations where he committed some dumb fouls. I remember at one point he had his 3rd foul. He came into the 4th. It might have been the 3rd quarter. He just came back from halftime. As soon as he gets in, he gets a moving screen call. 4th foul, goes right back to the bench. It was just not good. It was kind of a welcome to the league kind of thing for a rookie. But when they played the Rockets, he was a lot more like himself. He does need to improve his shooting a little bit, but his 7'4" frame makes him a crazy presence at the rim and away from the rim. We always talk about his shot deterrence at the rim, but we've seen so many shots deterred away from the rim at this point, strictly because of his 8-foot wingspan. Wemby is going to be special. He's still a work in progress. He's not an instant, all-star kind of guy like some people were saying. He's not going to make the Spurs an instant playoff contender. They're going to be an okay team for years to come. But Wemby has arrived, and he looks pretty good, pretty polished. He actually had the same exact stat line that Tim Duncan had in his debut in a Spurs uniform. Fun fact, if you didn't know that. Now, we talked about the major stories, players, and happenings around the first week of the NBA season. That's cool. Let's talk about some smaller teams. Let's get into it. There's a lot to say about the Pistons in just 3 games, but let's just unpack this team. Let's take it bit by bit. They found out who their bigs are going to be. Their starters are going to be Jalen Duren, without question, and Marvin Bagley is likely going to back him up for the foreseeable future. James Wiseman cannot seem to find his footing, and at this point, Wiseman is just another player with an immense amount of potential that isn't living up to it. Now, who I really want to talk about is Jalen Duren. Many people know who he was the youngest player in the league last year. He's just 19 right now. And I made a Pistons video and I talked about him a little bit. And I told you guys I expected him to become the starter, but nothing at all would have prepared me for the start he's had up until this point. In his first 3 games this year, his stat line has looked like this. In game 1, he had 23 and 15 rebounds on 82% shooting from the field. Game 2, he followed that up with a 14 and 17 game, shooting 87% from the field. And in their 3rd game, he flipped the points and rebounds from the last game with 17 and 14, shooting 72% from the field. Now, look, I knew he was going to be good after last year's showing. And like I said this before, so I'm not even going to reiterate the things that I said. And I especially, like, it was a no-brainer with the distributor like Cade coming back. But what Jalen is doing is blowing all expectations out the water. And I'm willing to bet people forget he's just 19 and was just the youngest player in the year last year. And that means some rookies this year are even still older than him right now. Now, he quickly makes the Pistons a team that will compete. I'm not going to say they're a playoff team or a play-in team, but they're going to catch a lot of teams that don't have their guard up by surprise. Now, past him, Asar Thompson being on this team, because like I said, I didn't expect to talk about Jalen Duren. I expected to primarily talk about Asar and Cade on this team. In this instance, we're going to talk about Asar. We'll talk about Cade on another date, but Asar, he's looked pretty good. He hasn't scored the ball too well, shooting just around 26% in their first 3 games, but he still found a way to make an impact where he's averaging almost 11 rebounds, and in just 3 games, he's totaled 7 blocks. He has a 2.0 assist to turnover ratio, which is exactly what you're looking for or more. His offensive game will continue to come along, but he's found a way to not only stay on the floor, but he's also making plays that don't have to do with scoring. It's early, but Asar Thompson is already shown to probably live up to his potential, have the, Pistons start to move off some of their other guys that haven't panned out, like Killian Hayes and stuff, and have Asar move into that role a bit more and not be a forward so much. Now, the next team I want to talk about, and I know this is called League Pass Darlings, they're not really a darling in this case, but the Chicago Bulls, we gotta talk. And I haven't even made a video on you guys. I haven't wanted to make a video on you guys because it's been a mess. Y'all paid y'all coach under the table, didn't tell nobody. It's just a lot going on, a lot of unlucky stuff, a lot of turmoil in Chicago. They're on the road to rebuilding. If you're not on the road to rebuilding, you need to hire a new coach. It's one or the other, because we're only 2 games into the season and they've already had a players only meeting. That's ridiculous. Like, them losing to OKC and in the fashion that they lost, that wasn't even that much of a surprise. It is what it is. This team's not that good. We know that. And Zach LaVine scoring 51 in a loss, a career high in a loss, is crazy. But what was a surprise was the players only meeting immediately after. You're in game 2 and you're having a players only meeting, bro. It's some uninspired basketball going on. Something's got to give. You got to fix that if you're the Bulls front office, and you got to figure it out fast, or just rebuild. Just hit the hard reset and just go from there, because that's what it seems like. Now, 2 other League Pass teams that I wanted to show some love to, and I mean, I'm not going to go too deep into them because we made videos on them in the offseason. Kind of expect where they're at now, and I kind of want to do sort of update videos to those videos to see where they're at in the middle of the season. So I'm not going to go too deep, but the Pacers and the Magic are both 2-0. Both teams are at the top of the East right now. I know it's 2 games in, so that's weird to say. But regardless, they have both won both of their games, and they both are teams that look like they could have, or I wouldn't say have, but they will more or less be. Those are 2 teams that essentially look like they're the Kings of last year. They're a team that they're young, they haven't been winning, but they've been in their rebuild mode for the last couple years, and it might be time. And I think both of these teams have kind of hitting that stride to where they can have a king sort of run. Obviously, I mentioned Wembanyama, and of course, he's not the only rookie. And I was very tired of the Wembanyama stuff as if he was the only rookie during the offseason. So I'm taking it upon myself to talk about some rookies, and that's how we're going to close the video. That's what we're going to talk about. And first up on that list, I already mentioned him earlier in the video, Dereck Lively II. Perfect pickup for the Mavericks. That's exactly what they needed. I remember my homie asked me who Dereck Lively was when they drafted him, and I pretty much told him, don't worry, he's what y'all needed. He's perfect for Luka. He's a great pick and roller, great lob threat for Luka, and he found himself starting in the second half for Dallas against San Antonio, where he finished with 16 points and 10 rebounds on 7 for 8 shooting in 30 minutes. Now, the last time a player had 15 and 10 and shot over 80% in their debut was in 1963. Like I said, Lively is perfect for Luka, and we just witnessed the birth of a player that looks like Tyson Chandler. We might be able to call him Baby Tyson, Baby Ty Crane. We're going to figure out a name for him, but he reminds me a lot of Tyson Chandler, and he's filling in that kind of role for Luka and this Mavericks team. Another player I wanted to talk about was Cason Wallace of the OKC Thunder. Now, this OKC team has had a lot to talk about, a lot of people talking about them, but a lot of people don't talk about their rookie Cason Wallace. The guard had 13 points on 5 for 5 shooting in the win against the Chicago Bulls, and it was an extremely encouraging debut for the 10th overall pick, who came into the league with questions about his jumper. He was obviously a defensive pest. He's always been that. If he continues to knock down shots, he'll be a massive addition to the Thunder's outstanding young core that already has a couple pieces that are 3-and-D and can really shoot the ball. Then the last guy I wanted to mention, and this one I really was excited to mention him during the offseason because a lot of people were making a big deal about his summer league performances, and that was Brandon Miller. Of course, the 13-point stat line versus the Hawks won't wow you, but Brandon Miller's debut did confirm why the Hornets selected him with the second pick in the draft. In a span of 3 minutes late in the fourth quarter, Brandon Miller hit a step back three, a reverse layup, and another three. Each of the shots either tied the game or gave the Hornets the lead. It was clear right there why they picked him. He's playing in relative obscurity in Charlotte, and he still had a solid debut coming off the bench. With less responsibility than the player the Hornets passed on, Brandon Miller should probably have an easier transition to the league than Scoot Henderson, who we saw throw up a goose egg in his first game in the league, which I do expect him to show up, but that is just what happened in his first game. But that's all I got for you guys in this video. Let me know what you guys think about the NBA's week 1 in review. Like I said, this is my first time doing this, first iteration of this series, and we're gonna tighten it up as we go along, figure out how to get, you know, the little flow going, whatever you want to call it. But that's all I got for you guys in this one. Is your boy TB with the greatest hoop stories in the base on the tube. And until next time, I am out. Peace.